Welcome back to the deep dive. You know those tiny, unassuming words in English? The ones that seem to just sit there kind of holding everything together?
Yeah.
The ones you might barely notice until you suddenly find yourself utterly confused by a sentence.
Yeah, I know exactly the ones you mean.
Today, we're taking a magnifying glass to those linguistic unsung heroes. They might seem small, but these little grammatical bits are absolutely the glue, the secret architects of our sentences.
Exactly. We're diving deep into prepositions today. And our mission really is to go far beyond just the basic definitions. We want to unlock their incredible complexity, their surprising versatility, and even some pretty fascinating linguistic history.
Okay.
By the end of this deep dive, the idea is that you're going to have a much more nuanced understanding of how prepositions truly work, why they're so vital for clear communication, and hopefully how you can use them with, well, absolute confidence.
And to guide us through this intricate world, we've drawn insights from a really comprehensive analytical guide to English prepositions. We're pulling from the best lexicographical authorities and some cutting-edge linguistic research. So yeah, get ready because we're about to unpack some seriously cool stuff.
Let's start by getting to know our star player, the preposition itself. At its core, a preposition belongs to what linguists call a closed class of words.
Closed class, meaning?
Meaning it's like a fixed foundational toolkit of words. It rarely gets new additions, unlike, say, the huge, ever-expanding world of nouns and verbs. These are function words or grammatical words.
Right. So unlike nouns or verbs, which have their own meaning, a preposition's main job is to express a relationship between other bits in a sentence.
That's it exactly. They're the connectors.
So they link people to objects, moments in time, physical locations. They literally build the logical architecture of our sentences, making sure everything hangs together.
Precisely. And you'll find major dictionaries like Cambridge, Oxford, Merriam-Webster, all converging on this core relational function. Merriam-Webster even calls it a function word that typically combines with a noun phrase to form a phrase which usually expresses a modification or predication.
Okay, that sounds a bit technical, but the key is that combining part, right?
Yes. And that brings us to a crucial sort of non-negotiable characteristic of prepositions. They must govern a subsequent object of the preposition.
Ah, the object. Right. So the object is usually a noun or maybe a pronoun, a whole noun phrase, or even a gerund that in verb form acting like a noun.
Exactly.
And this governing relationship is actually a fantastic diagnostic test, isn't it? If a word looks like a preposition but isn't followed by something it governs, then it's not actually working as a preposition in that sentence. Wow, that's a powerful insight right there.
It really is. It helps clear up a lot of confusion. Take the word down, for example.
Okay.
If I say, he walked down the street, down is a preposition because it governs the street. There's that relationship.
Makes sense. Down the street.
But if I just say, he fell down, well, down isn't governing anything after it. It's simply modifying the verb fell, telling us how he fell. So in that context, it's acting as an adverb.
Ah, okay. So it's all about what comes next and what job it's doing there.
Precisely. Context is everything.
Okay, so it's not just about simple physical space then. What other kinds of relationships can these tiny words actually express? Because that's what I find truly fascinating, how much meaning they pack in.
Yeah, and that's where it gets really interesting. Prepositions convey this huge array of relationships, both concrete and abstract.
Right.
We're talking about everything from place, like in the library, to movement, like up the ladder, or time, like after the contract. Pretty straightforward. But they also go much further, expressing these abstract and logical connections. Things like possession, as in of the team, or purpose for him, manner with a screwdriver, agency, maybe by repeating the test, or even topic, like talking about languages.
Wow, that's incredibly versatile.
It really is.
Yeah.
And this versatility highlights that a preposition's identity isn't just its short form, but its indispensable role as this relational engine building complex meaning.
So while the preposition itself is key, its real power, its functional power, comes alive within the prepositional phrase. That's the complete unit it kicks off, where it actually does its work in the sentence.
Absolutely. A prepositional phrase has a very consistent structure.
Yeah.
It always begins with the preposition and ends with its object.
Right.
And in between, you might find modifiers, things like articles or adjectives, describing the object. So the basic formula is always preposition plus optional modifiers plus object.
And this structure can be super simple, like at school or with me, or it can get surprisingly complex, like in the crumb-filled rumpled sheets. That's quite a mouthful.
It can be.
And I've found that just recognizing these phrases is actually an incredibly powerful analytical tool for understanding sentences, don't you think? It really helps break things down.
It truly is, because by identifying and sort of mentally isolating these prepositional phrases, you can see the core components of any sentence much more clearly, the subject and the verb.
Ah, because the subject and verb are never found inside a prepositional phrase.
Never. So take a sentence like, one of my friends lives in Chicago.
Okay.
If you identify of my friends and in Chicago as prepositional phrases, what are you left with?
One lives. So one is the subject. Lives is the verb. Wow.
Exactly. It's like having a secret decoder ring for sentence structure. It cuts through the clutter.
That's brilliant. Okay, so what do these phrases mostly do in a sentence?
Well, the vast majority of prepositional phrases function as either adjectives or adverbs, basically modifying other parts of the sentence.
Okay, adjectives or adverbs. Let's take the adjectival ones first.
Right, so if it's adjectival, it modifies a noun or pronoun. It answers questions like which one or what kind. And crucially, it almost always sits right after the noun or pronoun it's modifying.
Got it. Like, Lori chose the dress with the slit. With the slit tells you which dress.
Perfect example. Or, the wildlife of Antarctica is very resilient. Of Antarctica tells you what kind of wildlife. It's specifying the noun.
Makes sense. And the adverbial ones.
Then there are the adverbial prepositional phrases. These modify verbs, adjectives, or sometimes other adverbs. They give us circumstantial information, answering questions like how, when, where, or why.
And placement is more flexible here.
Often, yes. Unlike adjectival phrases, these can sometimes move around a bit more in the sentence. For instance, Sean built a deck in his yard. That tells you where he built it.
Okay.
Or think about Harry drank his butterbeer with fervor. That tells you how he drank it, modifying the verb drank.
Right, right. But here's the bit that was a real aha moment for me, and maybe something that might surprise some listeners. Less commonly, an entire prepositional phrase can actually function as a noun.
Yes, that's absolutely right. It's less common, but significant. In this role, the entire phrase can act as the subject of a sentence.
Like, well, give me an example.
Okay, how about under the bed is always the first place I look when I lose something. Here, the whole phrase under the bed is the subject of the verb is.
Whoa, okay, that is surprising.
Or it can function as a subject complement. That means it follows a linking verb, like is or was, and it renames or describes the subject. For instance, my Shakespeare lecture is at 9 a.m. The phrase at 9 a.m. describes the lecture.
So this really busts that myth some people have that a prepositional phrase can't be a subject. Because while the head word of the subject is usually a noun, the entire phrase can occupy that subject slot in the sentence's overall structure.
Precisely. It's incredibly versatile.
It really is.
The ability of this single grammatical structure, the prepositional phrase, to function as an adjective, an adverb, and sometimes even a noun, truly makes it a kind of grammatical chameleon.
I like that. A grammatical chameleon.
It's just incredibly adaptable and a fundamental building block for creating nuanced sentences. When you start spotting these different functions in your reading, it really shows you the flexibility of English.
Okay, so let's dig into the kinds of relationships prepositions express. What's truly mind-blowing, for me anyway, is how these words don't just mark physical space. They actually unlock this fascinating cognitive trick our language plays.
That's a wonderful insight, and it really gets into how our minds work and how language develops over time. There's a core principle in cognitive linguistics at play here. Language often extends concrete, physical experiences to describe abstract concepts.
How does it work?
Well, we often treat abstract ideas as if they were physical containers. It's a metaphor, really. That's why we can say we are in love, or in danger, or maybe in a bad mood. We're treating love or danger like a space you could be inside.
Yeah, I never thought of it like that.
Think about the word for. It could denote a physical destination, right? Like heading for the city. Very concrete.
Yeah.
But then it extends metaphorically to time, like for a wink. And then even further to abstract purpose, I went to the store for milk, or reason, for goodness sake.
Wow. So understanding this transformation from concrete physical meaning to abstract usage is like a key framework for seeing how prepositions build all these different layers of meaning.
Exactly. It's a really powerful lens.
That's brilliant. And speaking of concrete, the most foundational categories of prepositions are probably those of time, place, and movement. And the big three here are in, at, and on, right? Their usage often depends on specificity for time and the nature of the space for place.
That's right. For time, think of it as a pyramid.
Oh.
In is for the broad units at the base. Months, years, seasons, parts of the day, like in the winter or in August.
Okay.
On gets more specific, used for days and dates on Friday or on September 15th.
Right.
And at is for the most specific points at the top. Hours or particular moments like at 9 o'clock or at midnight.
That pyramid analogy helps. And for place, how do in, at, on work there?
It's slightly different. In usually signifies containment or being inside an enclosed space. In a room, in the city, in the box.
Inside, got it.
On is typically for surfaces or lines. On the table, on the wall, on the bus, or on the coast.
Surfaces, okay. Public transport, too. Interesting.
Yeah, that's a common one. And at is generally used for specific points, addresses, or locations where typical activities happen. At the bus stop, at 74 Maple Street, at school, at work.
Ah, so there's that subtle but important difference, right? Like saying you're at Starbucks could mean you're just outside or using it as a meeting point, whereas in Starbucks means you're definitely inside.
Precisely. It captures that nuance. And then for movement and direction, we have a whole other set. To usually indicates the destination. I take the bus to campus.
Okay.
Into signifies movement from outside to inside. Jerry jumped into the river. Towards movement in a general direction, but maybe not arrival.
Just heading that way.
Right. And through describes movement from one side to another within something, like walking through the forest, while across is movement from one side to another of a surface, like swimming across the lake.
That's a lot of spatial nuance. Okay, beyond the physical, prepositions are vital for these abstract and logical relationships too. So how do these little words help us describe how something happens or why?
That's a great question. For manner, describing how you might use by or with. My roommate saved my life by killing the spider, or I fixed the light with a screwdriver.
Okay, showing the method.
Exactly. For cause or reason, you might see about or for. Theories about strategies for linking nouns and verbs. And for purpose, for is very common. Sarah went to the store for milk. Tells you why she went.
Right. And they also show possession or connection. You mentioned of.
Yes, of is primary for possession or composition. The keyboard of my computer is pink, or the bread consists of dough. And with can also show a feature or accompaniment, like your earlier example. I spilled coffee on the computer with a pink keyboard.
Got it. And what about showing where something came from, or how much of something there is?
Good points. For source or origin, we often use from. I got the sweets from the jar, or I received a suspicious email from my bank. And by is key for indicating the agent or creator in passive sentences. The book was written by a renowned author.
Okay.
And for measurement or quantity, we might sell things by the pound, or describe a majority of the students, or ask for a cup of flour. So you can see that concrete to abstract principle is really working hard across all these different categories.
It really is. It's astounding just how many prepositions there actually are in English. While it's considered a closed class, meaning new ones don't pop up very often,
Right, it's pretty stable.
it's still extensive. We're talking over 100 single-word prepositions and maybe around 150 when you include all the multi-word forms. That's quite a lot to keep track of.
It is indeed. The list of single-word prepositions is surprisingly long. You've got the really common ones like of, to, for, with, on, at, but then loads of others like aboard, about, above, across, after, against, all the way through the alphabet.
Yeah.
To versus via, within, without. You've likely used most of them without even thinking much about it.
Probably true. And then we have the multi-word prepositions, which you sometimes hear called compound or phrasal prepositions.
Yes. These are basically fixed expressions of two or more words that function together as a single prepositional unit. The key thing is they have to be learned as a whole, like a single vocabulary item.
Like idioms.
Almost. Kind of, yeah. They often consist of, say, an adverb plus a preposition along with, or maybe a preposition plus a noun plus another preposition in front of. Common examples include according to, because of, instead of, on top of.
And some are even 3 words long.
That's right. Things like by means of, in accordance with regard to, or in charge of. They add incredible nuance and are essentially these prepackaged meaning units in the language.
Okay. Now, one of the trickiest things in English grammar, I think, is that a word's function totally depends on its context. So many words like before, after, since, down, or in can be prepositions sometimes, but adverbs or even conjunctions at other times. How do we figure out what they're doing in any specific sentence? That's where it gets confusing for a lot of people, myself included sometimes.
You're absolutely right. It can be a real challenge. But there's a reliable diagnostic approach that usually cuts through the ambiguity. The key isn't the word's inherent meaning, which often stays pretty consistent, but rather the grammatical structure that follows the word. It's like asking, what job is this word doing in this specific sentence?
So it's that what follows test again. If it's an adverb, usually nothing follows it that it governs, right? It just modifies a verb, maybe tells us where or how, and is often movable within the sentence. Like, suddenly all the children jumped in. In is an adverb there.
Exactly. It modifies jump, tells us where they jumped, inside, but doesn't govern an object. Now, if it's a preposition, it must be followed by an object that noun, pronoun, gerund, or noun phrase, and together they form a prepositional phrase.
Like your earlier example, the children are playing in the backyard. Here, in is definitely a preposition governing the backyard. You can feel that connection.
You can. And if it's a conjunction, it has to be followed by a full clause, meaning a group of words containing its own subject and verb. So the game was canceled because the weather was so bad, because the word connects the main clause to the reason clause, so it's a conjunction.
This distinction based on what follows really clears things up.
And to really nail it down, you can use the pronoun substitution test. This is quite powerful.
Okay, how does that work?
Well, if the noun phrase following the word in question can be replaced by an object pronoun like me, him, her, us, or them, then the word is functioning as a preposition.
Ah, okay. Like, I took a shower after my brother. You could say I took a shower after him. So after is a preposition there.
Precisely. But if the noun phrase is actually the subject of its own clause and can be replaced by a subject pronoun like I, he, she, we, or they, then the word is functioning as a conjunction.
So I took a shower after my brother finished. You could say I took a shower after he finished. The he shows my brother was the subject of finished. So after is a conjunction connecting the two clauses.
Exactly. These simple tests are incredibly effective. They really unlock a much deeper understanding of how English sentences are actually built and how words shift their roles.
That's truly insightful. And speaking of unlocking understanding, let's talk about how prepositions act as semantic modulators. That sounds fancy, but it just means they fundamentally alter or specify the meaning of a word they accompany, right? It's like they change the flavor of the word they're attached to.
That's a great way to put it. And this is maybe clearest when we look in verbs. Take a simple verb like look. On its own, it just means to direct your gaze.
Right.
But combine it with different prepositions, and its meaning completely transforms. Look for means to search. Look after means to care for someone. Look up to means to admire. Look down on means to despise. And look into means to investigate.
Wow, yeah, completely different meanings.
They become distinct idiomatic units. This just shows how much of our everyday English lexicon is built from these powerful verb plus particle combinations. To sound natural and fluent, you really have to learn and memorize these chunks of language.
Which brings us neatly to phrasal verbs and prepositional verbs. These are basically verbs that idiomatically combine with a specific preposition or maybe an adverbial particle to create a new meaning, often one you couldn't guess just from the parts. Think search for, dream of, concentrate on, or consist of.
Exactly.
Yep.
Now, linguists sometimes draw fine distinctions between prepositional verbs where the preposition is grammatically locked to the verb and must come before its object, and phrasal verbs where the particle might act more like an adverb and can sometimes be separated from the verb.
Like turn the light on versus turn on the light.
Right. But honestly, for practical purposes, for learners and users of English, both types represent these fixed idiomatic pairings that simply must be learned as complete units. The meaning is in the combination.
Makes sense. And it's not just verbs, is it? Many adjectives are also conventionally followed by a specific preposition. This is that idea of collocation, essentially. Words that just naturally go together in English.
Absolutely. And the choice of preposition is often purely idiomatic, not based on some deep logic. For example, you're interested in a topic, not usually about it or for it. Or you're responsible for a task, not of it.
Right. It just sounds wrong otherwise.
It does. Other common examples include being aware of something different from something else, similar to another thing, maybe being good at an activity or worried about a situation. These fixed pairings really highlight that fluency in English often involves knowing these conventional relationships rather than just trying to apply logical rules. They're kind of part of the secret handshake of native-like English.
Okay, let's tackle one of the most persistent zombie rules in English grammar. The idea that you should never end a sentence with a preposition.
Ah, yes. The dreaded terminal preposition.
Everyone seems to have heard this one.
It's incredibly persistent.
Hmm.
But this old grammar rule, the one that says you can't end a sentence with a preposition, or preposition stranding, as linguists call it, isn't actually a rule native to English at all. It was basically imposed back in the 17th and 18th centuries.
Imposed? By who?
By grammarians, figures like John Dryden, who admired Latin and wanted English grammar to conform more closely to Latin structures. In Latin, you generally can't separate a preposition from its object, so they decided English shouldn't either, calling it a common fault.
But English isn't Latin, it's a Germanic language, right?
Exactly. And forcing English into a Latinist structure often makes our prose sound incredibly awkward and unnatural. There's that famous, possibly apocryphal Winston Churchill quote that perfectly illustrates
Oh,
this.
the one about...
Yeah, when supposedly corrected for ending a sentence with a preposition, he retorted something like, "This is the sort of nonsense up with which I will not put."
Right. It sounds ridiculous.
The sheer absurdity of the corrected sentence highlights just how natural the original phrasing ending with "put up with" actually is for English speakers. Modern linguists and nearly all reputable style guides today overwhelmingly reject this so-called rule.
So it's okay to end with a preposition then, mostly.
Absolutely. While consciously avoiding a terminal preposition can sometimes lend a very formal or traditional tone to writing, stranding prepositions is perfectly natural and grammatically sound in almost all other contexts, especially in conversation. It really functions more as a shibboleth. Now, a subtle signal of formality, or perhaps a certain type of classical education rather than a genuine grammatical error. The classic zombie rule, linguistically dead, but still walking among us, causing unnecessary confusion.
And I think part of why the zombie rule lives on is because people sometimes confuse acceptable preposition stranding with a different genuine grammatical error, the dangling or redundant preposition. This is a crucial distinction that often gets blurred. Stranding is usually fine. Dangling is always an error.
That's a very important point. A dangly or redundant preposition is simply superfluous. It either has no grammatical object where it seems like it should, or it's an unnecessary repetition of the preposition's meaning.
Can you give an example of a dangling one?
Sure. A common one is asking, where is she going to? The "to" is completely unnecessary because where already implies direction to a place.
So you just need where's she going?
Exactly. Or asking, what day are you leaving at? Again, at is redundant. Just what day are you leaving is correct and more concise.
Okay, that makes sense. And the repeated ones.
That's when the preposition appears logically with its object in, say, a relative clause, but then gets repeated unnecessarily at the end, like saying, that is the issue with which we are dealing with.
Oh yeah, that sounds clumsy.
It does. The correct, more formal version would be, that is the issue with which we are dealing. Or, perfectly acceptably using stranding, you could say, that is the issue which we are dealing with. Just not both withs.
Right. So, okay, for us, for the listener, what's the practical takeaway from all this about ending sentences and dangling bits?
Well, I think the practical takeaway is this. By understanding the difference between a natural, standard English structure, like preposition stranding, and genuine errors like dangling or redundant prepositions, we avoid over-applying outdated artificial rules. This frees us up to communicate more clearly, more naturally, without tying ourselves in unnecessary linguistic knots just to please a zombie rule.
Use the force, Luke. Trust your instincts.
Something like that. Trust what sounds natural in English.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, it's crystal clear that the English preposition, far from being just some minor function word, is actually this incredibly powerful and versatile tool. It's right at the very heart of how we express complex meaning. They're the unassuming powerhouses of our language.
They really are. As we've seen, they act as these relational engines, constructing the logical framework of our sentences. They quietly build all the connections, allowing for really complex thought to be expressed clearly.
And those prepositional phrases, they are these amazing grammatical chameleons, able to function as adjectives, adverbs, even nouns sometimes, allowing for incredible layers of detail and nuance. They're such flexible building blocks.
And the very system of prepositions, how it works, reveals that fundamental cognitive pathway in language. How our concrete physical understanding of space in, on, under, through is systematically extended to describe the most abstract concepts like love, time, purpose, reason. It shows us how our minds literally map the world into words.
That's fascinating. And mastering those idiomatic phrasal verbs and adjective collocations is absolutely crucial for fluency, isn't it? It shows that language isn't just about applying rigid rules, but about knowing these fixed conventional pairings that just make you sound, well, like you know the language.
Exactly. And finally, that whole saga of the zombie rule about terminal prepositions, it teaches us a vital lesson about linguistic authority itself. The difference between how language actually works and evolves versus outdated prescriptive traditions trying to fossilize it. It's a good reminder to question rules that seem to make language less clear or natural.
Absolutely. So ultimately, true grammatical mastery isn't really about rigidly applying old, sometimes arbitrary rules. It's much more about understanding the language's underlying structures, its possibilities, and the rhetorical choices those structures afford you. The humble preposition, when you really get under its skin, is a key instrument for achieving precision, clarity, and maybe even elegance in your communication. So the next time you use a tiny word like in, or on, or for, remember you're wielding a secret superpower.
That's a great way to end it. And maybe we can encourage you, the listener, to start noticing prepositions more consciously now. Pay attention when you're reading or listening. Perhaps challenge yourself to identify the function of prepositional phrases in something you write, or even try to spot those zombie rules when they pop up in older texts, or maybe even in conversation. You'll likely find it incredibly illuminating.
Definitely give it a try. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating and surprisingly complex world of English prepositions. We'll see you next time.